protein or meat? Hello, invisible friends. I am Logo, and I want to share with you the logical steps we must take if we have a major disease and how to face it while continuing to attend to the treatments and recommendations of your doctors. Many people want to know what is the best protein and how much should they eat. Proteins are the structural base or support of the body, and we use them to make tissues such as bones, organs, skin, etc. Every protein is composed or assembled by a combination of simple amino acids. The human body only has 20 amino acids as the base material to create our proteins. Of those 20 amino acids, we can only create 11 at will if we need them by breaking down and recombining the available amino acids into another amino acid that is needed to create a specific protein. The other 9 are essential, that is, we cannot synthesize or generate them by our own means, so we must eat them in order to have the availability of their use. Proteins are like a code or combination of amino acids, like the secret key to our social networks. If the user indicates which protein we need, the key would be the combination and amount of amino acids to assemble that protein. Imagine a keyboard with all the letters and symbols to be able to write your secret key. That will be ideal because no matter how complicated the code is, you will be able to have a key to indicate that code and thus be able to build the protein. Yes, on the other hand, we have a keyboard that lacks symbols, numbers, and characters. As much as we want to place the key to make that protein, it will be impossible since in proteins such as the secret keys of social networks, if you do not type the complete code, you will not be able to have access to the service, and in this case you will not have access to manufacture that protein. This happens even if a single acid amino is missing. Therefore, if we do not have a specific amino acid, especially the essential ones since we cannot create or synthesize them in the body, this will generate a problem in our cellular and tissue structural renewal. And that's not good at all. Proteins or combination of amino acids behave like breathing, that is, we must maintain fluid breathing in order to maintain a flow of oxygen in the body. There is no one who breathes a lot today to be able to breathe less tomorrow and thus rest, in the same way proteins work. On the other hand, any surplus amino acids that have not been able to combine in proteins or tissues of the body, according to their requirement pass to the liver, where they are transformed into glycogen and later into fat tissue. Therefore, excess protein will only burden the liver with more work. Another thing that is very common to confuse is meat with protein, excluding protein or amino acid sources of vegetable origin. Professor and Dr. Christopher Gardner of Stanford University explains that the human body needs 30 grams of pure protein per day to repair its tissues and grow. Regardless of whether you are an athlete or a sedentary person, explaining that on average we use 30 grams, and about 10 grams more would be for athletes or developing people, although that does not make much difference if we consume 40 grams. These amino acids are contained in approximately 250 to 300 grams of meat in general. So in the case of protein, it doesn't matter much if we are talking about chicken, fish, or cattle meat. And in this way, we will still store approximately 30% in the form of body fat. In the case of amino acids from vegetables and cereals, the doctor explains that in many cases what happens is the low amount of some amino acids compared to animal meat sources. An example is lysine, this amino acid that is found in rice with a deficit of almost 60% compared to animal meats. And if we need that lysine to build tissue, we will have a deficit of that 60%, and there is no other option. Knowing all of the above, how effective and healthy do you think concentrated protein shakes are? Well, draw the conclusions. Almost everything will turn into sugar since the daily excess is evident, and there will be energy fatigue in the liver caused by the processing of these amino acids. Therefore, it is not the volume but the small doses to supplement an amino acid that is more scarce. The intake of meats makes the process much slower, so we do not increase the volume of amino acids very quickly compared to smoothies full of simple amino acids that usually saturate the system when used in excess. something very important, and it is about the quality and typology of food, and I am referring to the other substances that they have both good and bad. In this case, we are talking about meats. If we think about meats, they usually also have fatty acids that cereals do not contain. The problem with red meat stems from overeating, as it contains a sugar molecule called Nu-5-GC, which our immune system recognizes as an invader, which can trigger an inflammatory and autoimmune response, damaging joints, arthritis, among other degenerations such as glaucoma, etc. In the case of white meats such as fish and poultry, there is the molecule Nu-5AC, which is the same as that of our human tissues and plays an important role in various biological functions, including the modulation of the immune system and cell interaction, and is found on the surface of many cells and is crucial for cell communication and immune response. For people who eat a lot of red meat, it is good to consume foods rich in potassium such as bananas, spinach, and drinking water with a little lemon juice, since potassium will help eliminate uric acid to avoid joint problems and even the development of gout, which inflames the joints of the feet. The meat of an animal that has always eaten cereals such as soy and corn will present a load of lectins, since this protein is in those cereals. The meats with the most nutrients are the meats of animals that have drunk good water and have eaten green and fresh grass. There are also processes of maturation of fresh meat in a vacuum, which makes the meat easier to digest and makes it more tender, breaking down a large part of the substances that can harm us when we consume this food excessively. Meat is the easiest and most important source of vitamin B12 because of its easy absorption compared to other foods that have it. Other maturation processes have had a bad reputation in a mistaken way for supposedly being precursors of cancer. I am referring to meats cured with sodium nitrites. According to expert in the field of nitric oxide research, Dr. Nathan Bryan explains, in the 1950s, a relationship was sought between the types of food that were consumed and the manifestations of disease that these groups had in common. At that time, a substance called nitrous dimethylamine was used. There was a relationship between fish meats cured with this substance, and it was determined that it was carcinogenic due to its high toxicity. Nitrates are derived from nitrosamines, and if they cause cancer, it was assumed that nitrates could cause cancer. But reality has shown that there is no direct relationship to that old hypothesis, and nitrates are not converted to nitrosamines in the human body. In fact, breast milk contains nitrates, explains Dr. Nathan Bryan, showing the cancer statistics in the United States. They are 10 times higher in vegetarians than in carnivorous people. Simply put, matured meats, especially naturally cured meats such as Spanish Serrano ham, are healthy, and the latter has a favorable lipid profile with health-promoting monounsaturated fatty acids. On the other hand, the myth that meats cause cancer in the colon is as false as it is clumsy in arguments. The issue is in the way we cook or prepare the food, and undercooked meat or in the middle is the right way to prepare. Highly cooked or burnt meat produces substances called heterocyclic amine, and these substances cause inflammation and disrupt energy in the cell, forming cancer. Taking care of the way we cook also has a connection to what type of condiments we put on it, what type of oils we use if it is the case, and how much is going to be cooked. Another example which is important to know refers to salmon meat raised in swimming pools or from the so-called fish farming. Wild salmon swam and lived, having to fight for their lives, and owes the color of their flesh to the amount of crustaceans or krill they ingested throughout their existence. Therefore, the nutritional potential of salmon varies between wild and farmed salmon, which is only fed with synthetic concentrates. On the other hand, the orange color of the meat is due to the ingesting astaxanthins from crustaceans in their diet. In the case of breeding animals, this artificially synthesized substance must be added to the food. And there are no studies that indicate that this antioxidant is safe in the long term. Natural astaxanthins are of many types and are a very powerful antioxidant. In fact, they give the possibility to microalgae that are eaten by krill to survive in extreme climates for up to 40 years. Synthetic astaxanthins are only available in one type. To understand it more easily, it is like consuming vitamin B versus consuming vitamin B3, B6 and B12 are all antioxidants, but each one does its job in different requirements and needs. In the pools, to avoid diseases, a kind of pesticide is sprayed to avoid pests and diseases, which are absorbed by the fish. On the other hand, the story does not end with salmon. The color of chicken meat, like egg yolk, in high-intensity farms acquires its color due to artificial pigments, since no one would eat a gray meat or a pale yolk. If you are wondering why, it is simple. They only eat genetically modified soy and corn, which results in meat with excess omega-6 as fatty acids, and this is highly inflammatory. Unlike farm-raised chickens that have an important omega-3 component in addition to the extra nutrients. In the case of farmed eggs, they contain 3 or 4 times more choline and leucine in the yolk, which reveals the difference between the amount of amino acids and their nutritional potential. Also, their potential in carotenes and vitamins is 40% lower for those raised in high intensity or factories. If you do not have access to buy eggs or pastured chickens, there is no need to worry. The important thing is to know that eggs are still an option as concentrated food. Chickens 100 years ago needed 125 days of development before they could be slaughtered and sold. At present, an impressive difference is developed in 45 days. To achieve this goal, a constant feeding system is required to be available at all times. To avoid getting sick, antibiotics are given among other medications such as Benadryl, Prozac, and acetaminophen. To keep its flesh pink, they carry a dose of arsenic or arsenic acid or roxarsone. Incredible that they place a substance that is poisonous, even if the dose is small, so that it does not kill us. This venom is more concentrated in its plumage. In the case of the United States, the use of diethyl was banned in the mid-1970s. Stilbestrol is a powerful estrogen or synthetic hormone that does a lot of damage to the testicles, ovaries, and thyroid, and is totally problematic for the fetus in pregnant women. This practice is no longer used because of the costs. Although there are legends, the truth is that in the poultry market it is not economically profitable at all, and these illegal practices carry large penalties. A common practice with chicken is to inject sodium phosphate as a preservative, and it is well known the significant damage that this substance causes to the kidney. Formaldehydes are also used to prevent salmonella among other bacteria in chicken meat, and that substance is used to embalm carcasses, and that sounds scary. A solution of sodium hypochlorite can also be used in water to decontaminate or kill bacteria. On the other hand, the most important thing is to vary foods to give the body time to eliminate substances that could accumulate. This information is to really know our choices and the consequences of our actions when choosing a food. Moderation is the key, and knowledge is because if we suffer from a health problem, we can choose what is most suitable for us. Otherwise, it will always be someone else who will choose for you, even if you are the one who pays the consequences. In the case of omega-3 and 6 fatty acids, per 100 grams of farm-raised chicken meat with natural food intake contain omega-3, 200 milligrams versus 50 to 100 milligrams contained in high-density chicken meat. Omega-6 in free-range chickens ranges from 700 to 1,000 milligrams compared to 1,500 to 2,000 milligrams in high-density chickens. Draw your own conclusions. For all foods, the ideal is 4 omega-6 for 1 omega-3, and intensive chicken is 23 to 1, an impressive differential. And if you ask me, why do I talk so much about chicken meat? I will answer for being the most manipulated animal in any aspect from before birth to being consumed as food. And because it is such a high demand for its consumption, it is good to know what it is. By the way, I'm not an enemy of chicken meat, and I consume it regularly. To finish the topic, there are nomenclatures on their chicken labels such as pastured, organic, natural, among others. I'll leave a link in the video description as a guide. The meat product with the greatest nutritional potential is liver, as it is the food with the highest concentration of nutrients that is obtained naturally. There are myths about how toxic the liver is, and that is false. If the liver filters and processes multiple substances, but does not accumulate any, the liver does not have a reservoir, it only processes a large part of the organic biochemistry. The most important thing is its large amount of substances that they provide us, these being very easy to absorb due to their chemical form. It is also said that you can have excess vitamin A, but there are no studies that show this problem from consuming liver, unlike synthetic vitamins A that due to their topology do have this drawback. And we are not going to eat polar bear either. It has a very high level of vitamin A, which if it would intoxicate us, the idea is not to consume liver exclusively, that would be crazy. The important thing is to know well their potential to manage their consumption, taking into account their nutritional level. Another case for you to understand a little more, rabbit meat, having almost no fat if consumed in excess, produces a syndrome called hungry rabbit, since the excessive protein combined with the lack of fats generates a deficit poisoning. This begins after days or weeks of just eating the meat of that animal. To conclude, I invite you to discover your best balance by varying or combining these foods, and thus you can design your healthiest path. That adjustment is not made in a day. Do not let yourselves be indulging by the learned despair within or by other people who, like birds of ill omen, preach defeatism. If you liked the video and want to help spread this information, remember to click on the bell and subscribe to receive more information like this. Remember that step by step we can improve. The worst thing is to do nothing. Invisible friends see you in the mirror.